The day my parents told me I wasn't welcome at my own sister's wedding, I thought I'd finally seen their true colors. But 3 days later, they showed up at my front door in tears, begging for $38,000. What they didn't know was that I'd just discovered a secret powerful enough to destroy the entire wedding. My name is Ethan Carter, and for most of my life, I believed family was everything. I was the kind of son parents bragged about. I worked hard, I stayed out of trouble. I built a successful construction company from nothing, and whenever my family needed help, I was always there. Looking back now, maybe that was my biggest mistake. Because when people get used to your help, they stop appreciating it. They start expecting it. Then eventually, they start believing they're entitled to it. I learned that lesson the hard way. It started 6 months before my younger sister Olivia's wedding. Olivia and I had always been close growing up. When our parents argued, we'd hide in our rooms together. When she got bullied in middle school, I defended her. When she couldn't afford college, I helped pay her tuition. I never kept score. That's what family does. At least that's what I believed. One Saturday afternoon, Olivia invited me to lunch. The moment I sat down across from her, I knew something was wrong. She looked nervous. "Ethan," she said quietly. "Yeah?" "I need a favor." I laughed. "When have you ever needed to ask?" She forced a smile. "Jacob and I are a little short on our wedding budget." I nodded. "How short?" She hesitated. $20,000. I nearly choked on my coffee. $20,000? It's not as bad as it sounds. It sounds exactly as bad as it sounds. She looked down. The venue costs more than we expected. I sighed. Olivia wasn't irresponsible. She was just terrible with money. Always had been. What happens if you don't get it? The wedding gets scaled down. And? Her eyes filled with tears. Mom says everyone will laugh at us. That statement told me everything. Not everyone. Mom. Our mother cared more about appearances than reality. Always had. If the neighbors bought a new car, she wanted a newer one. If someone hosted a fancy party, she wanted a bigger one. The wedding wasn't about Olivia anymore. It was about our mother impressing people. I leaned back. How much have Mom and Dad contributed? Olivia looked uncomfortable. Not much. Define not much. 3,000. I stared at her. They want a luxury wedding but only contributed $3,000? It's complicated. No, it wasn't complicated. It was ridiculous. Still, Olivia looked devastated. And despite everything, I loved my sister. So I helped. Not 20,000, but 10. I wired the money that same day. The way Olivia hugged me, you'd think I'd saved her life. Maybe I had. Unfortunately, that was only the beginning. Over the next few months, more requests came. 5,000 for flowers, 3,000 for catering, 2,000 for decorations. Every time there was a problem, somehow I became the solution. And every time my parents acted like I owed it to them. Not once did they thank me. Not once. Then came the engagement dinner. The night everything changed. The restaurant was packed. Friends, relatives, co-workers, everyone was celebrating Olivia and Jacob. At first, everything seemed normal. Then my father stood up to give a toast. He raised his glass. To Olivia and Jacob. Everyone cheered. Then he smiled. And to everyone who helped make this wedding possible. I expected nothing. I didn't need recognition. But what happened next still shocked me. Dad thanked Jacob's parents. He thanked family friends. He thanked co-workers. He even thanked the wedding planner. But not me. Not once. Not after nearly $20,000. Not after months of support. Nothing. The room erupted in applause. I sat there silently. Olivia looked embarrassed. Mom avoided eye contact. And suddenly, I understood. They weren't forgetting. They were pretending I didn't matter. After dinner, I confronted Olivia privately. Did I do something wrong? She looked confused. What do you mean? Your father thanked half the city. Her expression dropped. Oh. Yeah. Oh. She sighed. I'm sorry. Why? Mom told Dad not to mention the money. I stared at her. What? She said it would make people think we couldn't afford the wedding ourselves. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was unbelievable. So, your solution was pretending I don't exist? That's not what happened. It sounds exactly like what happened. Olivia looked miserable, but she didn't argue, because she knew I was right. A week later, things got worse. Much worse. I received a phone call from my mother. Her tone was cold. Ethan. Hi, Mom. We need to talk. Something immediately felt off. About what? The wedding. I pulled my truck over. What about it? There was a long silence. Then she said the words that changed everything. We think it's best if you don't attend. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. What? You heard me. I laughed in disbelief. You're joking. I'm serious. My stomach dropped. Why? Her answer made no sense. Your presence creates tension. Tension? Jacob's family feels uncomfortable. I was speechless. I've met Jacob's family twice. That's not the point. Then what is the point? She hesitated, then finally said it. People talk. I frowned. What people? Some guests know you've been helping financially. Suddenly it clicked. This wasn't about tension. This wasn't about Jacob's family. This was about appearances. Again. Mom didn't want anyone discovering the wedding existed because I paid for so much of it. She wanted the illusion, the perfect image, the fantasy, and I threatened it. My chest tightened. So, after everything I've done... Ethan, no, I interrupted her. After everything I've done, you're banning me from my own sister's wedding? It's for the best. For who? She didn't answer, because there was no answer, only selfishness. When the call ended, I sat in my truck for nearly an hour, just staring ahead, trying to understand how my own family could do this. That evening, Olivia came to my house. She was crying before I opened the door. I'm sorry. Do you agree with this? No. Then stop it. It's not that easy. I laughed bitterly. It is that easy. She looked away, and that told me everything. She wasn't willing to stand up to them. Not even now. Not for me. Eventually, she left. And for the first time in my life, I felt completely alone. The next few days were miserable. I ignored calls, ignored messages, focused on work, tried convincing myself none of it mattered. Then something unexpected happened. A former employee named Marcus called me. His voice sounded nervous. Ethan, what's up? I think there's something you should know. My stomach tightened. What is it? I wasn't going to say anything. Marcus. He took a deep breath. Yesterday, I was working at the wedding venue. My pulse quickened. Okay. I overheard a conversation. A strange feeling settled in my chest. What conversation? Marcus hesitated, then said something that made my blood run cold. It involved your parents. I gripped the phone tighter. And? They weren't talking about keeping you away from the wedding. The silence stretched. What were they talking about? Marcus lowered his voice. Ethan. They were talking about making sure you never found out where the rest of the money went. My heart stopped. What money? Marcus swallowed hard. I don't know. But whatever they're hiding. He paused. It sounded big. Then the line went silent. And at that exact moment, I realized being banned from the wedding wasn't the real story. It was only the beginning, because somewhere behind the lies, behind the wedding, behind the humiliation, my parents were hiding something far bigger, and I was about to find out exactly what it was. Ethan barely slept after Marcus's phone call. The words kept replaying in his mind. Make sure he never finds out where the rest of the money went. What rest of the money? I had already contributed nearly $20,000 to the wedding. As far as I knew, my parents had only put in $3,000. So what exactly were they hiding? At 6 a.m., I drove to my office and started reviewing every transfer I'd made to Olivia over the past 6 months. $10,000 for the venue, $5,000 for flowers, $3,000 for catering, $2,000 for decorations, $20,000 total, all documented, all traceable. But that still didn't explain Marcus's warning. I called Olivia. No answer. I called again. Straight to voicemail. That was unusual. Then I called my father. Also ignored. By noon, my frustration had turned into suspicion, so I did something I never thought I'd do. I drove to the wedding venue. The place looked like a movie set. Crystal chandeliers, imported flowers, a massive outdoor reception area overlooking the lake. Nothing about it said family wedding. It screamed money. A lot of money. Too much money. As I walked toward the entrance, I spotted Marcus loading equipment into a truck. He looked relieved to see me. You came. Tell me exactly what you heard. Marcus glanced around before speaking. Your parents were in one of the private rooms yesterday. They didn't know I was nearby. What did they say? Your mother was angry. She said, if Ethan finds out, he'll destroy everything. My chest tightened. And your father? He said, he won't find out. The paperwork is locked away. Paperwork. That word hit me like a punch. Paperwork meant records, documents, something concrete, not just gossip. Marcus continued. Then your mother said, we already spent most of it. There's no way to put it back now. I felt my stomach drop. Spent most of what? Marcus shook his head. That's all I heard before someone walked in. I thanked him and headed toward the venue office. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for, but I knew I needed answers. An unexpected discovery. The wedding coordinator recognized me immediately. Mr. Carter, we haven't seen you in a while. I just have a quick question. Of course. Has the wedding been fully paid for? Her smile faded. Actually, no. There's an outstanding balance. My pulse quickened. How much? She checked her computer. $38,420. I stared at her. $38,000. The exact amount my parents would later beg me for. At that moment, a terrible realization formed in my mind. They hadn't simply excluded me from the wedding. They'd been planning to use me as an emergency bank account. They expected me to step in when the bills came due, and because I'd always helped before, they assumed I would help again. But the coordinator's next sentence changed everything. The strange part is that there was a much larger deposit originally. I froze. What do you mean? According to our records, a deposit of $80,000 was made several months ago. My head snapped up. 80,000? Yes, but most of it was withdrawn or redirected through change orders. My mind raced. $80,000. Where had that come from? It certainly wasn't from me, and my parents had never mentioned it. The coordinator continued, unaware of the storm building inside me. Usually families leave the deposit in place. This one was unusual. There were multiple revisions. Who authorized the revisions? Mr. and Mrs. Carter. My parents. My hands started shaking. Someone had deposited $80,000. Then my parents had moved the money around. And now there was a $38,000 shortfall. Where had the missing money gone? The locked cabinet. That evening, I drove to my parents' house, not to confront them. Not yet. I wanted evidence first. The house was dark. Their cars were gone. Probably wedding meetings. I still had the emergency key they'd given me years earlier for family emergencies. Apparently, this qualified. Inside, everything looked normal. Too normal. I headed straight for my father's office. Most of the cabinets were unlocked. One wasn't. A small metal filing cabinet in the corner. Locked. I remembered Marcus's words. The paperwork is locked away. My heart pounded. I searched the desk drawers until I found a key taped underneath the bottom drawer. When the cabinet clicked open, I felt a chill run through me. Inside were folders labeled Wedding Contracts, Bank Transfers, Estate Documents. The last folder made me pause. Estate documents. What did that have to do with the wedding? I opened it, and my world shifted. At the top was a letter from my late grandfather's attorney. The date was 6 months earlier. The subject line read, Distribution of the Carter Family Trust. I read the first paragraph once, then twice, then a third time because my brain refused to accept it. As sole trustee, Margaret Carter is authorized to distribute the trust assets equally between Ethan Carter and Olivia Carter upon the beneficiary's 35th birthday. Equally. My grandfather had left a trust for both of us, and I had never heard a single word about it. My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages. Value of trust, $160,000 distribution due, 6 months ago. Then came the bank records. My mother, acting as trustee, had transferred $80,000 into an account controlled by my parents. My share, my grandfather's inheritance, the same $80,000 that appeared in the wedding records. Suddenly, every piece fell into place. The mysterious $80,000 deposit, the missing money, the desperate secrecy, my exclusion from the wedding. They hadn't just used me, they had stolen from me, and they were terrified I'd discover it. As I stood there holding the documents, my phone rang. "Mom," I answered. "Where are you?" Her voice sounded sharp. "Why?" "We need to talk." "About the wedding?" "Yes." I looked down at the trust documents. Or about the $80,000. The silence was immediate, heavy, terrified. "What did you say?" "I found the paperwork." Another long silence. Then my father's voice came onto the line. "Ethan, listen carefully." "I'm listening." "This isn't what you think." I almost laughed. "You stole my inheritance." "No." "Then explain the transfer." My father exhaled slowly. "We borrowed it." "Borrowed. From me. Without my knowledge, without my permission. For a wedding I wasn't even allowed to attend. Where is the money now? We can discuss this in person." "No. Where is it?" My mother's voice cracked. Most of it was spent. The room seemed to tilt around me. On what? Neither of them answered immediately, and that silence was more frightening than any confession. Because it meant the wedding wasn't the whole story. Not even close. Finally, my father spoke. "We made some investments that didn't work out." Investments. I closed my eyes. They had taken my inheritance, lost most of it, used the remainder to fund a luxury wedding, then banned me from attending because they were afraid I'd uncover the truth. And now, with a $38,000 balance due, they were out of money, the same amount they would soon come begging me for. A new problem. I was about to respond when headlights flashed through the front window. A car pulled into the driveway, voices outside, then laughter. Olivia and Jacob. My sister was coming inside. She had no idea I was standing in Dad's office holding proof that our parents had stolen my inheritance. She had no idea the wedding she was planning was partly funded with money that belonged to me, and I had no idea whether she was innocent or involved. The front door opened. Footsteps approached the hallway. I quickly gathered the documents. Then I heard Olivia's voice from the living room. "Mom? Dad? We need to talk about the venue payment." My heart stopped. "The coordinator says the balance is due tomorrow." Tomorrow, $38,000. And I was standing in the dark with evidence that could blow up the entire family. The footsteps came closer. Then Olivia stopped outside the office door. The handle began to turn, and in that moment, I realized the next few seconds could change all of our lives forever. The final part reveals whether Olivia knew about the stolen inheritance, what happened when the family confronted the truth, and how the wedding and the Carter family ultimately changed forever. The office door slowly opened. For a split second, Olivia froze. Her eyes widened. "Ethan?" I stood there holding a thick stack of documents. The color immediately drained from her face. "What are you doing here?" I looked down at the papers, then back at her. "I think the better question is, what exactly did Mom and Dad tell you?" Confusion flashed across her face, then concern. "What are you talking about?" Before I could answer, my parents rushed into the hallway. The moment they saw the documents in my hands, they knew. The secret was out. My mother's face turned white. My father's shoulders sagged. For the first time in my life, they looked scared. Not angry, not defensive. Scared. And that told me everything. Olivia looked between all of us. "Someone explain what's happening." Nobody spoke. The silence felt endless. Finally, I held up the trust documents. "Did you know Grandpa left us an inheritance?" Her eyebrows furrowed. "What inheritance?" My mother closed her eyes. That answer alone was enough. Olivia hadn't known. She was just as shocked as I was. "What inheritance?" she repeated. I handed her the papers. As she read the first page, I watched the confusion slowly transform into disbelief, then horror, then betrayal. $160,000? Her voice shook. Split equally between Ethan and me? Nobody answered. Olivia looked up. "Mom?" Still silence. "Dad?" My father's eyes dropped to the floor, and then Olivia understood. "You took it." The words barely came out. My mother stepped forward. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this." Olivia laughed, a short, broken laugh. "The money disappeared, and that's your explanation?" "We had reasons." "What reasons?" My father rubbed his face. "The market crashed." "What?" "The investments failed." I stared at him. Investments. Even now, he was trying to make it sound respectable. As if gambling away your children's inheritance somehow became acceptable if you called it investing. My father swallowed hard. 3 years ago, I lost most of my retirement. The room fell silent. He continued. "We thought we could recover." My mother nodded. "So we borrowed against the trust." "Borrowed?" I snapped. "You stole it. We intended to repay it." "With what?" Neither answered, because there was no answer. The truth was obvious. They'd taken the money, lost it, then spent what remained trying to maintain appearances. The luxury wedding, the expensive venue, the extravagant decorations, all funded by money that never belonged to them. Olivia looked physically sick. Tears streamed down her face. "My wedding." My mother immediately grabbed her hand. "Honey, we were trying to give you something beautiful." Olivia yanked her hand away. "You used my inheritance. And Ethan's. You lied to us." My mother began crying. But nobody felt sympathy anymore, because these weren't mistakes. They were choices. Months, years, of deliberate choices. Then Olivia asked the question none of us wanted to hear. "How much is left?" My father looked away. My stomach dropped. Olivia's voice became sharper. "How much?" Finally, he whispered. "Almost nothing." The room exploded. "What?" Olivia's scream echoed through the house. "Almost nothing?" My mother started sobbing. My father looked broken. But neither reaction changed reality. $160,000. Gone. Just gone. The truth gets worse. I thought that was the worst part. I was wrong because Olivia suddenly noticed another folder. A folder I hadn't opened yet. She grabbed it. "What is this?" My parents immediately panicked. "Olivia, don't. Too late." She opened it. And everything changed. Inside were loan applications, credit reports, debt notices, collection letters. My heart nearly stopped. The total debt was over $220,000, not $80, not $100, $220,000. They weren't just broke, they were drowning. Years of bad decisions, failed investments, secret loans, credit cards, personal debt, everything hidden behind a fake image of success. Suddenly, the wedding made sense. The luxury, the obsession with appearances, the lies. They'd been trying to convince the world they were wealthy long after the money was gone. My father sank into a chair. It got out of control. Nobody responded, because there was nothing left to say. 3 days before the wedding, the next 72 hours felt like a nightmare. News spread through the family. Relatives started calling. Questions started flying. Arguments erupted. Several vendors threatened cancellation. The venue demanded immediate payment. The wedding was on the verge of collapse. Then, exactly 3 days before the ceremony, my parents showed up at my front door. Just like the title promised. My mother looked exhausted. My father looked 10 years older. The moment I opened the door, they started crying. Literally crying. My father spoke first. "Ethan." I already knew why they were there. The number had been sitting in my head ever since visiting the venue. $38,000. The remaining balance. the exact amount needed to save the wedding. My mother clasped her hands together. We need help. There it was, the moment I'd been expecting. My father took a shaky breath. If the balance isn't paid tomorrow, the wedding is canceled, I finished. He nodded. Silence filled the room. Then my mother whispered, "Please." I looked at both of them. The people who raised me, the people I trusted, the people who stole my inheritance, the people who banned me from my own sister's wedding. And now they were begging. The irony was almost unbelievable. My father lowered his head. "We know we don't deserve it." "No," I said quietly. "You don't." More silence. Then I asked a question. "If I pay this money, what happens afterward?" Neither answered. Because we all knew. Nothing would change. The debt would still exist. The lies would still exist. The betrayal would still exist. The wedding would simply cover everything up. Again, just another layer of paint over a collapsing wall. I looked at my parents, then made a decision. The decision. No. My mother broke down immediately. My father closed his eyes, but I wasn't finished. I'm not paying the venue. Neither spoke. I'm not rescuing your lies. The tears continued, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty, because protecting someone from consequences isn't kindness. Sometimes it's enabling. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop saving people from the results of their own choices. My parents left without another word. And honestly, I thought that was the end. It wasn't. The next morning, Olivia called me. Her voice sounded strangely calm. "I need to see you." An hour later, she arrived. Without my parents, without Jacob, just her. She sat across from me, then placed a folder on the table. "What's this?" "Open it." Inside were contracts, vendor agreements, venue paperwork, cancellation forms. I frowned. "What am I looking at?" Olivia smiled through tears. "The wedding." I stared at her. "What about it?" She took a deep breath. "I canceled everything." "What?" "The expensive venue, the decorations, the luxury catering, all of it." I was speechless. She laughed softly. "You know something funny?" "What?" "I don't even like any of it." I blinked. "What?" Mom picked everything. For the first time in months, we both laughed. A real laugh, the kind that comes after surviving something painful. Then Olivia told me her plan. Instead of a massive luxury wedding, she and Jacob rented a small lakeside chapel. Simple ceremony. Close family, close friends. No fake appearances. No debt, no stress, just love. The total cost? Less than 10% of the original budget. A week later, I stood beside Olivia at the small chapel. The sunset reflected across the lake. The air felt peaceful. For the first time in months, nobody was pretending. Nobody was competing. Nobody was lying. Even my parents attended. Quietly, humbly. The arrogance was gone. The image was gone. Reality had finally arrived. When Olivia walked down the aisle, she looked happier than I'd seen her in years. Not because the wedding was expensive. Because it was real, and that made all the difference. 1 year later, a lot changed. My parents sold their oversized house, paid off part of their debt, started financial counseling. For the first time in decades, they stopped pretending to be something they weren't. The relationship between us didn't magically heal. Trust doesn't work that way. Trust takes years to build and seconds to destroy. But slowly, very slowly, things improved. As for Olivia and Jacob, they used the money they saved on a down payment for a house. Today, they're happier than ever. And me? I finally learned a lesson that changed my life. Family is important, but love should never require self-betrayal. Helping people is admirable, but enabling dishonesty only creates bigger problems later. Sometimes the hardest word to say is no. Yet that single word can protect your peace, your future, and your self-respect. Because real love isn't built on money, appearances, or sacrifice without limits. Real love is built on honesty. And sooner or later, every secret eventually meets the truth.